everyone. I'm Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, along with my co-host Chris Kay. Welcome to Debating Metal, the show where we discuss and debate our favorite forms of music, hard rock and heavy metal. And this week we're doing a little head-to-head battle with two of hard rock's most unique bands.
These two bands both released albums in 1989, and both albums put each band firmly on the map. Though one band would go on to have massive mainstream appeal, the other would find more of a niche audience and often be credited as inspiration for many bands that would follow. Both bands crossed the genres of rock, metal, funk, and rap, and tonight we debate to see which one had the better album.
And which albums are we referring to? Well, tonight's head-to-head pits the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Mother's Milk up against Faith No More's The Real Thing. Which one will come out on top? So, Chris, Faith No More versus the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Mother's Milk versus The Real Thing. We're stretching out and we're going outside of our typical boundaries with these two bands, and I like that idea. I just don't know if I listen to this enough to make a worthy assessment, but we're gonna try.
You know, they're
at least
very different than what we've talked about in most of our episodes. But they both had a pretty strong impact on, metal bands, rock bands, and metal fans. So I think they're definitely a worthy, group of bands to talk about. And these albums, while I would say they're pretty different, they do share some similarities in that there's the rap, rock, funk, metal. But there was also some heat between Anthony Kiedis and Mike Patton, who Anthony felt that Mike stole his style, etc. I think that's kind of a stretch. You know, they're very different, but
bottom line is two white guys trying to hip hop.
Well,
it's kind of goofy looking,
you know.
Right? No, and I mean, bottom line is yes. I believe there was some influence on Mike from Anthony, because Anthony had been doing it for a while already at this point. And Mike, they're from California, so they definitely, were friends, or up as far as I know, and they've known each other. So yeah, there's definitely some influence. You can see that. But I don't think he stole something outright from Anthony as far as being able to move. I mean, that's just something, the way the music makes you react.
Well, he said his style, like his clothing, etc. too. But I mean, you're talking two long-haired white guys that don't wear shirts sometimes. Like, I don't know what you want. I guess Fabio stole their style too.
Oh, jeez. Fabio.
Hey, we're in the 80s, so...
I know exactly what you're referring to, and it's just Fabio. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, these are. I'm not gonna put anything down as far as these are both two good albums. I am a Red Hot Chili Peppers fan. I'm more of a Chili Peppers fan than I am a Faith No More fan. That is for sure. Faith No More pretty much lost me after Angel Dust, and even probably during Angel Dust. I to the point I never really got into Faith No More. I got much more into the Red Hot Chili Peppers for several albums, and I was a bigger fan of theirs than I was of Faith No More. So I'm not going to deny that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to favor one over the other either, because these are two very distinctly different albums, and the similarities are slim, but they're there, and we're going to talk about them. All right, so the first album we're going to talk about is Faith No More's The Real Thing. That album came out June 20th, 1989 on /Reprise Records. And I didn't know this. This is a completely different aside. I did not realize or know. I read something or heard something the other day that Reprise Records was started by Frank Sinatra. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I heard. And that is pretty cool. I mean, basically he had left Capitol after so many years, and he just decided to put out his own stuff and basically reinvented his career. And all the reinvention and the secondary career was all on Reprise Records. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, he did. He formed it in 1960, and I guess now it's owned by Warner Music Group.
Yes. So anyway, yes, released June 20th, 1989, /Reprise Records, / Reprise Records. Recorded at Studio D in Sausalito, California, and it was produced by Matt Wallace and the band themselves. And to go over who's in the band, for those who may not know, Faith No More is made up on this album of Mike Patton on vocals, Jim Martin on guitars, Roddy Bottom on keyboards, Billy Gould on bass, and Mike Borden on drums. All right, so we'll just go right into it. Song number 1, From Out of Nowhere. For me, the first second I heard that song, the first riffs that played, instantly brought me to a punk song. And then a few seconds later, the melody and the harmony of the riffing and the way that they were doing it, and that they added that little tiny harmony part to the guitar riff, kind of changed it. It's very catchy. I like the song. It's pretty cool. It just kind of punches you real quick. It doesn't really tell you what's coming on the rest of the album. That is for sure. You don't expect the rest of the album while you're listening to this song. What are your thoughts on it?
That was actually something I noted as well. Like, the listeners really has no idea what they're in store for with the next, I guess technically 8 songs or 9 songs, depending on which version you had. It's a very vocally driven track. And Mike Patton's singing is pretty excellent. He has a huge range. He has an ability to switch notes very quickly, etc. Like he knows what he's doing with his vocals. And it's a little repetitive, but I don't mean that like in a bad way. Like, it's got this riff that is catchy and kind of keeps you going through the song. And I think it's a good opening. And it's also the first single they released.
Right. And that's exactly what it is. It may be repetitive, but that's the punkish part of it about it.
Yeah.
So, but I like the song. I thought it was pretty cool. So then comes Epic, song number 2. That is the big single off the album. So the notes that I put down is that while the Red Hot Chili Peppers pioneered funk rap rock up to this point, Faith No More had a little less funk, a little more rock, and even though this is a song is predominantly rap oriented, the chorus is obviously not a rap oriented part of the song. It goes on to highlight Mike's vocals and show how good he is as a singer. It's just one of the examples that's throughout the entire album, and it's a catchy song. I mean, between the raps part and then when you get to the chorus and then that whole part about, what is it? Is it? That's the catchy part of the song. That becomes an earworm and that sticks in your head for a day or two or a week or whatever. I mean, it's hard to forget that part. So I think it's a pretty cool song.
Yeah, I mean, you said earworm. The whole song kind of is, right? Because it's made up of 3 really distinct different vocal parts, and each of them is catchy, which is pretty crazy. Like that would all happen on one song. It's got the rap rock delivery of the verses, it's got the singing chorus, and then it's got this like punchy what is it, that just keeps kind of repeating throughout the song, and it's extremely memorable. I remember, and I told you this story before, but I remember being at a friend's house in like 1990-ish, and we were playing with Nerf guns, and that video with that song came on, and everyone in the room just stopped and watched it. And that's something that's always kind of stuck with me, this kind of moment where the song and the video were so interesting and powerful that it just stopped everyone from like, and these are kids, like 4 or 5 year old kids, just stop and watch a music video. That's, to pun intended, pretty epic.
Yeah, no, that is very powerful when something like that can happen, especially when the end of the video era was slowly working its way into the mainstream. So song number 3 is another single that came off the album called "Falling to Pieces." So the funky vibe, or the funk vibe of this song, is what makes it really catchy and very cool. But for me, I think, and this doesn't necessarily say it makes it a bad song, but the little tiny rap parts right before it gets to the chorus, I almost felt like it was unnecessary, because the way that they're done just goes, it's very cliche as to how a non-hip hop artist would rap on a song. And I think for me, just hearing that, I'm like, it kind of, to me, it didn't detract. It brought the song down a notch, because I didn't think it was necessary. It could have been said and done a different way. But I also realized that Faith No More is like that, and that's what they would do. So you got that balance that you have to figure out. But the song overall is pretty cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the song.
So there is something more to that, where Mike Patton was hired during production of this album. They had to fire Chuck Mosley. He was having a lot of problems with drugs, and he was getting violent, and he worked through a lot of that before he unfortunately passed away a few years ago. So he really did work on himself to become a better person. They actually ended up playing with Chuck later on again a few times, and Mike and Chuck would sing together, which I think is really cool to have that kind of.
That is pretty cool.
What's the word? Redemption, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So, but Mike was hired during production of this, and he wrote all of the lyrics and vocal melodies in about 12 days, which is pretty impressive when you really think about it. All of the vocal melodies, all of the lyrics. So
that is impressive.
So there's going to be a few songs that I feel like are amiss. We'll talk about that as we go through it. And Falling to Pieces, while it was really successful, this was one that I like exactly what you said. I like the melody of the verses, of the chorus, but the little rap parts, they're all right. But the band doesn't even like this song. They stopped playing it almost entirely in 1993, and they very rarely looked back. They don't have a lot of positive things to say about it. They don't like playing it. It's kind of boring to play, and they never vibed with it, and I kind of get that. So,
like I said, it's hard to sit there and say, yeah, it's because of the rap part. I don't necessarily think it's because of that.
I don't think it's specifically that.
But I really thought when I sat down and I listened to the song, I thought it was relatively unnecessary.
Yeah.
They could have probably done something with a little bit better bridge that would have made the really cool and catchy chorus and the really good melody of the chorus that much better.
It is a catchy chorus, and it sticks in my head a lot, especially like when I listen to this album. That indecision, it clouds my vision part, it will stick in my head.
Oh, that stuck with me. And then the other part where, I'm falling to pieces, somebody put me together.
Yes.
That, I walked inside the house yesterday going, somebody put me together, just because I was just listening to this song. So it's got some cool, catchy parts. I see where the band may sit there and say, yeah, we don't need to do this. All right. Next up is, surprise, you're dead. Song number 4. This is the song to me that brings in the metalheads. This is the song. It's heavy. It's a little thrashy in parts. The guitar breakdown at about 1:40 is very thrash-like. So, and that's Jim Martin because he's from San Francisco and his friends are in Metallica and Exodus and all those other bands. So that is, I guess, his way of getting that out of himself. And you listen to Surprise You're Dead and you listen to Epic, and it's like you don't think they're the same two bands,
No.
But with the bass and the funky bass and the drum rhythms, and then you say, okay, yeah, I can see that. But yeah, those two songs are very different from each other. But Surprise You're Dead is a pretty cool song in my eyes.
Yeah, it's it is really, pun intended, a surprise, because you're following a song like Falling to Pieces, and it's so much heavier, vastly different vocals. I mean, there's some growling, there's machine gun kind of vocals. I would say this is the metal track of the album, and it's heavier. It's there's some good stuff coming up as well, but this song is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Now, song number 5 goes in another completely different direction. Zombie Eaters. This starts off with this atmospheric acoustic intro, very melancholy in a way. And then it gets to this one point, and all of a sudden it gets, very distorted, very heavy. Right around the 2-minute mark, the distorted bass, and it changes directions within the song, and then it goes back to the melancholy part, and then back to crunchy and distorted. It's a strange song in that regards, but at the same time, it is pretty cool. Listening to it, at first, I listened to it in the car, but the first time I heard it, I was just listening to it on my phone, and I kind of got a vibe at the beginning of like Remember Tomorrow from Iron Maiden.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Then I realized it wasn't exactly like that, but there was something about it that kind of triggered that part of the song in me. Another cool thing that I like about it, the riff towards the end, and there you go. That's the other part. Again, there's a little bit of metal in there. It has that. It has an Am I Evil vibe to it. With the riffing guitars. And I was like, well, okay, that's pretty cool. And you could tell that, again, that's the Jim Martin influence or the San Francisco influence. But it's a very cool song because of the way it goes back and forth and the heaviness and the lightness, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot of what I was thinking about it as well. It shows a lot of dimension to Mike Patton's vocals, because you go from heavy or soft to heavy, to soft again. He's doing a lot of different dynamics of the way he's singing, like different stylings. And then that keyboard adds a lot of dimension to the track as well, with the atmospheric sound. It's very mature on this album. Like it is almost another level than some of the other tracks.
Yeah, you definitely see that. And one thing about, going all the way back to Epic real quick is the same thing that we talk about with a lot of albums that we review, is there's always that one song that stands out. That was Epic on this album, because it's, even though they do rap rock throughout several songs, there's nothing on the rest of the album that's like Epic.
Mm-hmm.
There are more stuff in line with, like, From Out of Nowhere and Falling to Pieces and Surprise You're Dead. Those are more in line with each other than anything with that to do with Epic. But again, but a song like Zombie Eaters, because of the maturity of the songwriting, it can lend itself to being, that idea that we can do something different and still be the same band.
Yeah.
All right. So now that brings us to song number 6, which is The Real Thing. That's the title track. It's an interesting and long song. That's about all I got.
I mean, I really like this track. It starts off a bit slow, but it has a really strong build to it over the course of the song. I love the orchestral keyboards. Mike's vocals are excellent, and again, he runs the gamut of vocal stylings here. Some might not like an 8-minute track, but to me, it's a journey worth taking. Like, it is a very strong song, and I think the more you listen to it too, the more it builds on you.
that is the one thing I did notice. It feels like a journey. Exactly the words that you said. It definitely feels like that, and it definitely feels like it goes somewhere, but it doesn't really veer off the track. You know, it definitely makes you feel like you're going somewhere. I don't. It's a strange feeling that the song does exude that feeling. For me, it did get a little long, and it was kind of like, all right, we're gonna keep doing this. Is that what it is? You know, I'm looking at the 8 minutes, and I'm like, all right, come on, we didn't have to go that long. But lyrically, I think he had a lot to say.
You know,
that's for sure.
It is always interesting to me how people can feel that way about a song. It's like, I don't know. There's so many good songs that are long. And it's like, oh, it's too long. And I'm just thinking, why? Like, is your attention span that short? like,
well, in this particular case, the song doesn't really, like we said, it doesn't very veer off the track.
Yeah.
You know, but then you've got songs from Iron Maiden that are 11 minutes long, but it's 11 minutes of, you've got 3 minutes of this speed, 3 minutes of that speed, 4 minutes. So an Iron Maiden song will change 3 or 4 different times within that 8 to 10 minute length. This one didn't really do that. It was, it had its verse, it had its chorus, it had its thing, and that was, it just maintained itself there.
Yes and no. There are moments that it does slow back down again and then kind of speeds up. But I get what you're saying for the most part. It's not like 3 different movements of a song. It is repeating itself in the way that a typical song would.
Right.
I got you.
Okay, so song number 7, Underwater Love. Here's what I got to say about this song. This song seems like a combination, an amalgamation, if you will, of several songs from this same album. So it almost feels like this song was a mix of several different songs on this album to make this one track. Other than that, I didn't really feel much on this song. So you may have a different feeling about it than I do.
No, I get that. I mean, to me, it's kind of one of the filler tracks towards the end. You get that a lot of times when you get to track 7 of an album. This wouldn't be the first time we've talked about that. It's mid-tempo. It's kind of funky. Doesn't do a lot for me. But there are some elements of it that are kind of creative. Like, it does give you an underwater feeling at the beginning. And it's hard to explain, like, without just straight up listening to it. There's certain songs that can capture... like if it's a desert song, right? You could capture that feeling of the open plains and that freedom. Well, this kind of does that in a way where it does feel like it's subject, but again, still feels a bit like filler.
Alrighty then. And then going from one filler song to The Morning After, that has a cool drum bass intro thing where the guitars then come in a few seconds later. That's catchy, but as the song progresses, it doesn't really ever catch me the rest of the way. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, if you've listened to Faith No More for, really before that time, it sounds that funky bass line sounds a lot like We Care a Lot, and it's got something different about it though, where it's got the contrasting soft vocal lines and sorry, I kind of lost where I was. It's got the soft vocal lines and keyboards that are kind of contrasting that harsh funky bass. So it is interesting. I would say it's better than, say, Underwater Love, but again, it's not one that really does a lot for me, but it does have some really nice guitar harmonies as the song goes on.
I can give you that. Now, the next song, number 9, Woodpecker from Mars, the instrumental, that song I think is excellent. The song starts with kind of like a Baba O'Reilly-esque keyboard intro, but sound very similar to a violin. So the first half of the song is mostly keyboards, bass, and drums. And then, just before the midway point, the guitar comes in. Even though there's no guitar coming in for the first minute or so, the first part of the song is really heavy. I like this track a lot. Almost a jammy kind of song to some degree, but it really does a good job of keeping you entertained, better than other songs on the album.
I mean, it's almost like it inspired bands like Tool. I
could see that. I could see that.
It is a really cool, interesting track. It's kind of a rock waltz. So if you're familiar with waltzes, it's very similar to that style. It's a purely instrumental outro. And even though I think we're going to talk about the next two songs, because there's different versions of this album that came out at the same time. So I think it's worth mentioning the next two songs, but
that's fine.
But yeah, it's a cool outro for the typical version of the album.
Yes. All right, so for those of you who are not getting what we're talking about, there's a vinyl version, there's a cassette version, and a CD version. Now, the vinyl version, this is the last song. On the cassette, it has another song called, which we're going to go over, Edge of the World. And then I just looked at my CD tonight. My CD actually came from BMG Direct Music, that like the Columbia House type thing. And it has War Pigs as song number 10.
Yes.
And Edge of the World is song number 11.
So all those came out at the same time, and that's the reason why it's worth talking about. So,
yeah. So, you and I were actually, referencing the fact that that I was listening to War Pigs today at work, their version, good version. I don't have any complaints about it. What was a joke I said? I said, "Oh, I'm listening to the whiny version from Mike Patton, but then again, Ozzy is also a whiny vocals too, so they all. And then I told you that Tesla did a cover of War Pigs, and Jeff Keith also has a whiny vocal too. So I guess to do the song well, you need to have whiny vocals. But the version that they do is excellent.
Yeah, I think it's a solid cover.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever.
So, it's got great instrumentation. They're very talented musicians, so that's no surprise. Mike's vocal ability and range to cover this song is pretty much perfect, but he gives it his own spin, so it's a nice cover.
Yeah. All right, and then last but not least, the song "Edge of the World." All right, so you pointed that out to me to make sure that we talked about the song, so I went ahead and I listened to it. All right, so it's a pretty cool blues song. But when you start listening to the lyrics and paying attention, and you put yourself in the point of view of the storyteller, I'll put it that way, it's a little creepy. I'm just going to put that out there.
It is.
It's a little creepy. So, and not creepy in in a dark haunted house kind of way either.
So one thing about the album as well, we mentioned that Mike wrote the lyrics in 12 days, right? But the band also had to kind of rein him in a couple times because the lyrics were a bit darker and heavier than what they ended up being. So this, I think, probably is one of the leftovers where they were still pretty dark and heavy. A little, yeah. So I've never been a fan of this track, and the reason I brought it up was because I had the cassette version of this. I grew up with the cassette. We didn't have a lot of CDs in my house until later, until like the 2000s. And vinyl was pretty minimal as well. My parents definitely didn't buy vinyl for me because I didn't have a record player in my room. So I had cassette. and this was one that I never really liked, and I would always kind of skip over. That doesn't mean it's a bad song. It just means I'm not a big jazzy lounge singer kind of song guy. That's not my thing. So, knowing that the vinyl did not have this, I kind of wish I had the vinyl. But again, it's just not for me. But it was track 6 on the cassette, so I don't know.
It's actually not a bad song.
It's not. But
it's not a bad song. It's and it doesn't. I say it's bluesy because it is bluesy, but it doesn't have that traditional pattern that blues has when it gets to the chorus.
I would describe it as more jazzy than bluesy, but I do get the bluesy vibe to it as well.
Right.
It's just, you can probably see why it doesn't appeal to somebody without like a more learned musical palette. But when you listen to it when you're a kid, it's also a different experience. So
yeah, it's also again very different from the rest of the album.
Yes.
So it kind of throws you off, especially when you've been listening to that plunky bass the whole album. This doesn't really have that per se. So it's a very different song.
So what did you think as a whole about this album?
I like the first half of the album. To me, is excellent. I definitely like it. I like the heavier parts of it just because I'm that's me. But at the time when it came out, I was a fan of Epic. I watched that video, however many million times it played on MTV.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of the singles back then. I wasn't part of the record store yet. 1989, when this came out, I was still in college, second year out of the 3 that I went. And but I was doing a lot of my own things, so I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to music per se. That was that little tiny period. Around this time also is when 9 Inch Nails came out, and I had heard a song from them, and so music was really changing between 9 Inch Nails. I had heard of this band called the Red Hot Chili Peppers that was causing a lot of underground stir coming out of California. Epic was a big hit at this point in the middle of the summer, so it was definitely something I listened to a lot during this time period. But I didn't get into it past Epic. So I didn't know about From Out of Nowhere. I didn't know about Falling to Pieces until later on.
Gotcha.
Well, but I like the album. It's a pretty good album.
I mean, I would say it's a really diverse album. It shows kind of hints of where they were going in the future. If you like this, you might not necessarily like the stuff that comes afterward. But it's more similar. Like it's kind of a in between the first 2 albums where, and again, pun intended, in between.
Uh-huh.
So it's between the first 2 albums, the Chuck Mosley led albums, and then what would come after with Mike Patton. So it is kind of a middle ground between the two. But I think it's an excellent album and a really great start for this rendition of the band.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so that brings us now to the Red Hot Chili Peppers and their album Mother's Milk. All right, so Mother's Milk was released on August 16th, 1989 on EMI Records. It was recorded at Ocean Wave Recording in Hollywood, California, and Image Studios in Hollywood, California. It was produced by Michael Beinhorn. Now, Michael is known mostly as an alternative rock producer, but he also produced Ozzy, Soundgarden, Korn, Black Label Society, and Marilyn Manson, to name a few of the harder bands. One story that came out of this recording sessions with Michael is that him and the band ended up not seeing eye to eye on a lot of the things that Michael was trying to do, and they basically pushed back pretty hard on the direction that he wanted. He wanted it to be a little bit harder edged album. They didn't want that. They succeeded in not getting what he wanted per se, and that led to the falling apart between their relationship. Although it was funny because they totally encouraged that the last album as much as they could, get out of Anthony, because Anthony in the previous album, Uplift Mofo Party Clan, was all trashed out. So, Red Hot Chili Peppers for this album was Anthony Kiedis on vocals, John Frusciante on guitars, Flea on bass and trumpet, and Chad Smith on drums. However, one track, Fire, we'll talk about the track itself a little bit later, had Hillel Slovak on guitar and Jack Irons on drums, and then the song Taste of Pain had Philip Fisher on drums because Chad had not been hired yet. So, Chris, take it away.
All right. So the album starts with Good Time Boys. It's a fun, kind of funky intro to the album. Lots of references to themselves. Things like being naked on stage with their cocks on, or socks on their cocks. Not to be crass, but that's the phrasing they used. The other references they included on the album included Fishbone, Thelonious Monster, and X, which were punk bands that they were fans of and friends with. It even has some backing vocals from Jack Sherman, who they fired from the band and then unceremoniously left out of their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. But it's a fun track. It's a nice little start to the album.
How influential was Jack?
As far as his contributions to the band?
Yes, as far as his contributions.
I mean,
not much.
Not a whole lot, but he did co-write half of Freaky Styley, and he performed on Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I'm just saying. It's sort of like it's the opposite of like what Dave Abruzzese from Pearl Jam played on 2 albums, on the 2 of the 3 biggest albums in Pearl Jam's career, and they didn't invite him. They actually had Jack Irons, who's in the Hall of Fame twice, one for the Red Hot Chili Peppers and one for Pearl Jam. It's just very strange.
It's more that they just didn't see eye to eye, and Anthony had a kind of heat with Jack. I'm not Jack. I'm sorry. Yes, Jack Sherman. You said Jack Irons, and it threw me off. He had some heat with Jack Sherman, and that just never changed. So I'm pretty sure that's the reason he got left out.
Well, there you go. Good Time Boys for me is this is your typical Red Hot Chili Peppers of the time. It's rap combined with it's rap combined with funk rock, catchy chorus. It's Red Hot Chili Peppers. That's the epitome of who they were at that time, in my opinion. On this song, about 3 minutes into the song, this weird thing happens. I don't know if this is just because it was a bad recording or something. Maybe you can clarify this. But it almost sounds like the songs are switching out to different songs, like there's a mistake happened. Is that the way you hear it?
As far as I know, that's all intentional because there was a lot of overdubbing, and I think they actually used excerpts from other songs on it.
Okay, so it wasn't just a bad file that Spotify had. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. It almost sounded like it was changing the dial, but it didn't have that effect.
Yes.
It just had an effect like it was really bad editing.
There's like little bits from other stuff in there throughout the song, and it's weird, but they were just doing weird shit. Like I don't know the best way to say it.
Yeah, that's what they do. The other thing that I thought was pretty cool. This song is a bit of a plotter, but the guitar work from Frusciante on this track is excellent. It's just stellar.
Yeah,
work.
he was a good addition to the band, no matter what. Like, yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of Red Hot Chili Peppers, he was only around for 2 albums. He did this and Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic. Then he left for a long time because he had some personal issues. He was highly addicted to drugs, and he was also not able to cope with the fame. And then he would later come back.
Well, but he only left for 1 album, came back, and then left again.
Yes, but there's a long period of time between the first run and the second run. So even though there's technically only 1 album between, they were kind of on hiatus for a little while between there. So moving on, we're going into Higher Ground, which was the first single they released. This is a cover of Stevie Wonder's Higher Ground, and it's awesome. It really is. It's been used on so many TV shows and movies. It was on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie soundtrack, Beavis and Butthead, Center Stage, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Walking Tall, The Longest Yard, The Karate Kid, The Change Up, and it was even in a couple video games, which this makes sense. It was on Rocksmith and Guitar Hero Live. But it's a great cover. I heard this far before I heard the Stevie Wonder version, and it made me actually go back and listen to Stevie Wonder's version, and I kind of got into him after that.
This version, okay, so again, we've referenced this so many times on all these reviews. There's always that one song that stands out. This song is far and away well produced, better produced than any song on the album. The mix on this is so solid. I mean, the bass is just, it thunders in the background. If you have a really good system, you can feel it just kind of rumble in the background when you're listening to it. Just everything is so clear about it. The guitars come right in your face. The mix on this is excellent. You can tell that this is well produced. All the separation, it's far and away better than anything on the album. That's not to take away from the album, because the album is well produced overall, but it is funny how this stands out so far above the rest of the album, and how good of a song and good of a version that they did on this song. It's great. It's excellent.
All right, so that takes us into track 3, which is Subway to Venus. And so to me, this is some kind of cross between Fat Albert and James Brown. Like, it's interesting. One thing you can always say is Flea's bass lines are just awesome, and that's no exception here. He even played the trumpet, one of the trumpet parts on this track, and that's pretty impressive in and of itself too.
Yes, he plays the trumpet. He's I mean, Flea's a musician. He's a very good musician. He's just not a he's not technically versed, if you want to put that word.
He plays with feeling.
What's the word?
You know?
Yeah, but what's the word I'm trying to say? He's not classically trained.
There you go.
So he like you said, he plays on feel. He plays great. I mean, he's a great musician. There's tons of musicians who are not classically trained who are excellent. I'm not taking anything, because Flea is probably one of the best bass players ever to live on this planet. He's excellent.
Absolutely.
And you can hear him on so many different tracks throughout the history of music. I mean, one big track that just comes to mind, he plays bass on Alanis Morissette's big hit that she had, You Ought to Know. I mean, that's him playing bass on that. So that tells you he's really freaking good. Subway to Venus, for me, that's a cool, funky jam. I like it. I like the horns on the song. It's a fun song for me. That's really pretty much all I can say about it. It's a fun song for me.
Yeah.
And that's just the Chili Peppers in general. They're very fun.
That's kind of the vibe on this album, is just having fun. You know, it's interesting when you really think about it. You know, just a few years before this, actually just a year before this, Hillel Slovak passed away from a drug overdose. Jack Irons left the band because he didn't feel like he could continue in that band without his friend. And then they hired D.H. Peligro as their drummer. Ended up not working out. He started writing some songs with them. They ended up letting him go. I think they had a few other people in between where they had him, and then they left the band. They finally find John Frusciante, and they start recording some stuff. And all of this is happening in just a short period of time. You would be surprised, like, really honestly, like, to think, with all that upheaval, with all that tragedy, etc., you know, for a fun album like this to follow, you would think it would be more saccharine, or maybe just more sad, you know, but it's not. It's It's
it's the opposite. It's really it is very strange. Drugs is a motherfucker. Okay, that's just I'm gonna tell you. But the funny thing about it is that Anthony was more strung out on drugs on Uplift Mofo than he was on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot had to do with obviously seeing his friend die, straightened his ass out for a little bit at least.
For a little bit, yeah.
And it things like that definitely play with your mind, and it sends you in obviously different directions. Jack Irons couldn't deal with it, and you know what? That's understandable. That happens to people. So you lose half your band. Okay, you bring in Peligro, you bring in Dwayne McKnight from George Clinton's Funkadelic, and then you realize a couple weeks later this guy's not going to cut it. This is not what we want. And he got pissed when they fired his ass.
Yes. Oh my God.
Pissed.
Yes.
But hey, it happens. But John Frusciante. Now here's the thing. John Frusciante, classically trained. He knows music theory, and he showed a thing or two to Flea. So that's the other impressive part about that. And it's funny because you see someone like John Frusciante and you understand that he is classically trained, but he doesn't play like that. He's so far out there that you would not think that he's classically trained, but he is.
Yeah, I've watched quite a few videos, especially during the Stadium Arcadium era, where he talked about how he wrote songs, and it's really always very interesting, and you can see how his understanding of music works. But it's that's another story for another time. We're gonna move on to track 4, which is Magic Johnson. This is a frantic funk rock song. Honestly, it's an audio assault from the beginning to the end. The guitar bass harmony and the last minute mark is pretty awesome. It feels a lot like a high school cheer. Like I don't know the best way to say that, but it feels like one of those cheers where like the cheerleaders are cheering at the crowd's kind of responding. But man, this is like ADHD in the form of a song.
Well, if you liked Magic Johnson and the LA Lakers as much as they do, you would understand. And that's what this song's about. It's about the Lakers. It's about Magic Johnson. It's about all the players, or a lot of the players that were on the team during the Showtime era of the Lakers in the mid to late 80s. And it is with the same frenetic, frantic pace that you have come to realize that the Chili Peppers can really exude. This is the song. This is the one that will just drive you nuts. But it's at the same time it's pretty cool, but it is pretty frenetic.
So track 5 is Nobody Weird Like Me. This is another frantic track. It's got some interesting elements to it where like they pull in some almost like crooning, and like there's just too much going on at times. I don't know the best way to say that, as far as like it's not as mentally draining as Magic Johnson. Like if Magic Johnson was like an 8-minute song, I think you'd need a nap afterwards. But this is close because they're back to back. So
yeah,
it's another Energizer battery of a song. I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
This song for me is like punk funk. It's fast like punk. But it's got the funk. This, as you said, this song epitomizes the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the title says it all. They are weird. Nobody weird like me. So
for sure. Track 6 is Knock Me Down. So this track has shared lead vocals with John and Anthony. I would say more so John as the lead singer. It definitely has more of a rock vibe and has some similarities into the aesthetics of what would come along later in their career. So like Knock Me Down is almost like a prototype for what you would hear on, say, Californication or By the Way Later. I think it's a really great track. I really enjoy it, and if you like John singing, which I do, definitely check this one out.
Knock Me Down. This has a good chorus to it. It is definitely one of the more mature songs that the band has done to this point.
Yes.
It's not even just this album, but to this point in their career. This song is structured differently than their previous songs. In much like you said, it moves the band in a direction that they would eventually go to on the next few albums. Absolutely correct. You know, the subject matter, you know, being about Hillel and his death and his drug use. At the same time, they didn't want this to be an anti-drug song, because in reality, they really couldn't put that stance. And,
I mean, they still like drugs, so.
Right, and not be hypocritical. So, you know, I mean, as much as Anthony tried to clean himself up, he just kept faltering and faltering.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool song. It's definitely different in that regards, and almost different like how Higher Ground is different, but not in the same exact way. Obviously, Higher Ground had a lot of what do I call that? There was a legacy to it. This is not what I'm trying to say, but there's a legacy to it. It has, you know, Stevie Wonder
pedigree,
as opposed to pedigree. That's it. It had Higher Ground has a pedigree because it's a Stevie Wonder song, and they went out of their way to produce it. This is their own song, and they went out of their way to make this one better than most everything else. They knew what they were doing when it came to the song. One really interesting thing, and it caught me every time I hear it, and so it's caught me twice in the last couple of days. About 3 minutes into the song, there's a woman that comes on and starts doing this kind of, I don't want to call it a howl, but it sounds like something like that. And it instantly reminds me of the intro to Heaven's on Fire from Kiss, to the point where at first I thought it was a sample.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's what it was. I was trying to figure it out. And I was like, what is this? It sounds like somebody. And I couldn't. That's it. It's that, ooh, you know, like, yeah. Oh my God. I was stuck on that for so long, and you just nailed it.
It's funny because I heard it in the first time. Oh, okay. So it's not really that. I thought it was a sample. And then I heard it again today, and it tricked me again.
No, it's a woman named Vicky Calhoun who did backing vocals on a few tracks, and I was stuck on it. I was like, I wanted to say something about it, but I couldn't figure out what it was.
Well, that's it.
All right. Well,
there you go.
That takes us into track 7, which was the third single, Taste the Pain. This was the track that you mentioned earlier that Chad Smith did not play on. Instead, it was Philip Fisher from Fishbone. It is, for me, it's not my favorite of the singles. I think it's definitely the weakest of the three. But it's still a pretty good track. It just, to me, feels a little bit more middle of the road than some of the others.
It's definitely a strange track. I honestly don't think much of it. It's an interesting song. It's not my thing. I really don't understand why it was a single.
I agreed. Like, I feel like you could have picked something better for a single.
Right. But if you're going to take a song from the album as a single, this definitely beats out some of the other ones in that regards. You're not going to put Magic Johnson. You're not going to put Nobody Weird Like Me. Yeah. But
you could put Good Time Boys as a single before this.
Yes. I probably would have done that. But it was definitely weird. I mean, the trumpet solo by Flea, another one, is pretty cool. But that's, to me, it's about as cool as it gets.
The trumpet solo is good. I agree. All right, so that takes us to our, how do I put this? Most non-metaphorical track on the album, Stone Cold Bush. I wonder what this one's about. You know,
I wonder.
you know, Anthony pretty much said, like, what is a metaphor? I don't know what that is when he wrote this song, and just pretty much laid everything out as plainly as possible. And you know what? That's fine. And not every song has to be, you know, Bon Scott. You know, sometimes they can just talk about Bush and talk about, you know, blowjobs and whatnot, and that's fine.
Yeah. This one's got a cool riff. It's got a really cool groove to the song. But the lyrics are pretty straightforward. I can tell you that. I'm pretty proud. I did a pretty good job of looking at a lot of the lyrics on several of the songs that we were talking about tonight. So yay for me on this one.
So that takes us into the second cover on the album, which is Fire. Now, this wasn't originally for this album, but it was included as a tribute to Hillel, who had passed away the year before. He was the guitarist on this album, and as we mentioned earlier, Jack Irons was the drummer. This was a cover of Jimi Hendrix's Fire, and it's a really good one. Like, it's super fast. It's a different vibe entirely than the original track. And there's one lyric that was changed. I think there was a few, but this specifically was "Move over, Rover, let Mr. Huckleberry take over." And that was actually Slovak's nickname, Mr. Huckleberry. And did I mention it was extremely fast?
It is very fast. I bought the Abbey Road EP because of this song. And the only thing I can say about the song, it's weird. I like their version of it. I like what they do. I like the fastness I like the fastness. I like the speed of the song. I don't like the production. The production sucks ass on this song, just to put it straight up. You know, the drums are flat. The production is just flat overall. You know, Anthony sounds like he's singing in a hallway down around the corner. It's a shame because it probably could have used maybe just a remix. It might help it a lot. And maybe there is another remix out there of it. I don't know, but it's just the production is terrible. It's nice in that they included it on the album because of Hillel and stuff like that. So it's that. I mean, Jack Irons is also the one playing drums on it. So for those who don't know, this song was recorded during the Uplift Mofo Party Plan sessions. Left off the album, was later released on the Abbey Road EP, which was kind of like a mini collection of older songs from the first couple of albums. And, you know, the band themselves took pictures very much like the Beatles back in the day, crossing the street in England. Here's the funny thing about that. I don't know if anybody knows this. So that's the famous picture where they're naked walking with the socks on their cocks. The photographer who took that picture, or was it the Beatles, or was it the Chili Peppers? The photographer who took the picture lost the film, or the film got damaged and had to do it again, or he didn't have film in the camera.
No, I didn't know that.
Remember. So they had to do the whole session again. I don't remember if it was the Beatles or if it was the Chili Peppers, but I think it was the Chili Peppers, and they had to redo the whole thing of walking.
It was the Chili Peppers. It says British photographer Chris Clun took the photo in February of 1988. He had to do the shoot twice over consecutive days because the first time he realized he had no film in his camera. That's crazy. Hey guys, you know that embarrassing photo you took? Got to do it again. Yeah. I don't think they cared.
Do you mind putting it? Yeah, no. They were just probably like that the whole day. Hey, do you mind putting on a different sock? This one was just not clean enough.
God.
What'd you do to that sock? Why is it so stiff?
Oh, Jesus.
All right. Let's move on.
Let's move on to track 10, to Pretty Little Ditty. it's pretty much just that. It's a nice little instrumental. John would go on to create full albums of this kind of stuff. I would say like 17 or 18 of them at this point. So if you enjoy Pretty Little Ditty, then definitely check out his solo stuff, because he has a lot of this kind of stuff on there.
I like this song.
I do too.
I think it's a really, really, really cool song. It's a very cool instrumental. It shows the band has the potential to write a complex song. And
well, John has the potential to write.
Well, John. Well, but then you know what Flea does too, because Flea has a lot to do also with the writing and the way the things come through that. But the song itself, to me, it could have been like a song that maybe showed up on Blood Sugar Sex Magic or Californication, that because John wrote those helped write those albums, and he has this way about him, and I think if this song would have been more fleshed out, if you put it that way, they could have had lyrics to it, they could have had different melody, they could have had it could have been a bigger song. That's how cool of a song I think this is. If they put in a bridge or a chorus type thing, and they can easily have made this a big song. But I guess that was too much to ask for at this period of their career where they're still trying to mature.
I think they're still trying to mature.
Well, that's true, but songwriting-wise, they've matured pretty good.
So what's interesting is you really look at the songwriting credits, and if you watch some of those videos like I was talking about, where John's talking about the production and songwriting, etc., he really wrote pretty much all the music for a period in their career, where he was even writing the bass parts, etc., and obviously the other guys are coming in and making them even better. But, like we talked about how Black Sabbath wrote Heaven and Hell, and Geezer wasn't part of the writing process, but then he came in and he plays the bass like Geezer does. So there's always musicians that do those kind of things. But I thought that was so interesting that the band started out, more of a group effort, and then at one point in their career, they're just really letting John do the bulk of the work.
I mean,
it happens.
It tells you how good of a songwriter he is.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on to track 11. It's a punk rock classic. This is heavier and faster than anything else on the album. It's fast and sweet. It only comes in at 1 minute and 46 seconds, and it has the best solo on the album. Yes,
it has a very good solo, but there's a better one, in my opinion. This song is pretty cool. It's punk funk. It's typical Red Hot Chili Peppers. But what I like about this one, they don't hold back as far as what they want from this song. They want to get played on MTV. They want a video on MTV. Give them their video on MTV, will you? I think they succeeded a couple years later. The really, really fun part about this song is the Sweet Child of Mine reference at the end of the song. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually really like the track. It's fun, and it's short, and it's not like you wasted your time. It's only less than 2 minutes. So
that's punk for you, baby.
All right, so the next track is Sexy Mexican Maid. And, this is, for the most part, I would say kind of filler territory, but the highlight for me is there's a 30-second solo by John towards the end of the song, and you said you think it's better. I don't think it's better than the one in Punk Rock Classic, but I think they're both really good.
What I like about it is that it's so simple, and yet it evokes so much emotion to me.
I can see
I
that.
like those kinds of solos where it's just like you hit that one note and you can bend it a certain way and make it sound like you're crying. This has that. This doesn't have there's not a lot of notes involved. There's not a complex solo. It's one note here, one note there, a couple notes together here, one note there, bend that out here, and yet it says so much in that small period of time. That's what I like about the solo.
I can agree with that. And then that takes us to the final track on the album, number 13, which is Johnny Kick a Hole in the Sky. It's another funky track, and honestly, I think it's better than some of the ones a little bit earlier in the album, but, we're at track 13. It's easy to overlook it or forget it. I'd say it's in the right place, but, it's track 13.
Yeah, I can see your point on that. I found it interesting because of the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting lyrics as far as it's a testament from a Native American, and I really a lot of things that are Native American just really appeal to me. And so this one kind of stuck out. I don't necessarily think it's a great song in that regards, but the words and the message he's trying to convey definitely leave that mark for me. But I can see your point. Yeah, it's your song 13 into an hour-long album. I can see where it's like, all right, let's go.
Let's go. That's kind of what I mean, is that it's very deep into an album. And like I said, it's better than some tracks. Like, I think it's better than Nobody Weird Like Me. Probably Taste the Pain. Honestly, it's better than, but it's so late.
Oh, definitely better than Taste the Pain.
It's so late into the album that it's like, I almost didn't give it the love that it probably deserves.
Right, exactly. And
that happens.
You get to that point, when you get to that point, it's like, all right, come on, let's go.
Exactly. So I would say, it's easy to forget that this album really followed a lot of tragedy, because it is so fun. It's very easygoing. It's very funky. As I mentioned just a minute ago, it runs a little bit long, but it's still a good album. It's still a really good album, and despite some meandering tracks, it definitely reaches, they would definitely reach some higher or. Wow, I almost said higher ground.
Higher ground.
But I meant greater heights, but higher ground works even better with Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic. But this was a really good start to this lineup of the band. And I would say this lineup of the band arguably wrote some of Red Hot Chili Peppers' best albums.
Oh, for sure. For sure. This album for me, it is a fun album. We talk about it being long. It's not really long in terms of time, but 13 songs is a lot of
information.
Things that you have to start paying attention to different tracks.
Yes.
Huh?
It's a lot of information.
Yes, it's a lot of information. So, this is sort of like, when you have 27 songs from a punk band and it's all done in like 20 minutes. It's short, but my God, you got to go through the 27 songs. So
what was track 33 again?
But I like the album. I think it's a pretty cool album overall.
I would agree, but I guess it's going to come down to which one we think is best.
Okay, so we're at that point where we decide, in our opinion, which one we think is better. For me, this is an interesting one because, yes, they both rap. Yes, they both are funky. Personally, in my opinion, Red Hot Chili Peppers is more funk than Faith No More. I think Faith No More has a style that's played, when you play the bass the way that he plays it. I'm trying to think of his name, and I have it written here. I just forgot. Billy Gould. When you have a style like that Billy plays, it's a funk style, but I don't necessarily think it's funky like funk music is, in my personal opinion. That Flea is much better at that. Rap wise, the Chili Peppers have been doing it virtually since the beginning of their career. That was their whole thing. They were the rap punk funk band. To me, that's something that Faith No More instituted, but in reality, they didn't need to. I mean, Chuck Mosley started it for them, but I think when they got Mike Patton, I really think they didn't need to do that, but that was their style. That's what they did. That's what they wanted him to do. So he did it. When it comes down to it, I'm going to say that I prefer the Faith No More album, The Real Thing, more so than the Red Hot Chili Peppers album, based on the first half of that album.
All right.
You don't think I was going to go that way, did you?
I wasn't sure, but I didn't count it out because the more you were talking about it, what I heard from you, what you were saying, I felt like you were going to go with Faith No More. As we went through the albums, like I didn't initially know. I thought maybe you would go Red Hot Chili Peppers because you know them better. But just based on what you were talking about, I kind of saw the direction you were going. And I'm in agreement with you this time. I think The Real Thing is a more cohesive album. It's better. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be cohesive to be a good album. Obviously, there's some absolute chaos going on with Mother's Milk, but it's a lot of fun to go through. But I like more tracks on Faith No More's Real Thing. I think that first half of the album, like you mentioned, track 1 through 6, at least in the record version of it, or the one that we went over, the 11 track version, they're just amazingly solid. And then you've got Woodpecker, which I think is fantastic, and their cover of War Pigs is also really awesome. So I think there's more to really enjoy, where I think the actual strengths on the Red Hot Chili Peppers albums are the 2 covers. And then a few other tracks. But it's a lot of fun to listen to regardless, but I just don't think it's as good of an album. If you were comparing it more to like Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, it would be maybe a tougher call, but I think those are even further away from each other as far as like styles. So.
Oh, yeah. But I would say that Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic is heavier than, because they went away from the whole punky part that they do, the funk punk.
Yes.
They went away from that on Blood Sugar Sex Magic. So actually, Blood Sugar Sex Magic actually compares more in that regards to Faith No More.
In some degrees, but yeah,
in some degrees.
It's just, yeah. Anyway.
I mean, there's a couple things like, oh God, I can't remember the name of the song. It's towards the end of the album. On Blood Sugar Sex Magic, that's fast and funky and all that stuff like that, which brings you back to their punk funk days. But the rest of the album really is not like that at all.
Yep.
But that's for another time.
Yeah, we'll probably do something more with Chili Peppers. If you guys like this or these bands, we definitely want to hear from you. And is this a good genre to kind of go into again?
Yeah, let us know. Let us know in the comments when we post the video in YouTube, or let us know in the comments on Instagram or on Faith No More on Facebook. Facebook. Let's not talk about that. All right. So that brings us to our big 4 for tonight, which we're going to be doing a double big 4. It is the big 4 Faith No More songs and big 4 Red Hot Chili Pepper songs. So
there is actually a faith book.
I don't even want to
Religious
know,
Facebook.
and we're not going to talk about that.
Anyway, I just think it's funny.
All right. So since I did Faith No More first when we talked about the songs, let's do the Faith No More, and I'll go first, and then you can do the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and you can go first on that one. All right?
Sounds good.
All right. So my big 4 Faith No More songs. Now, for someone who doesn't listen to a lot of Faith No More, I didn't want to pull them all off of one album. So I actually had to listen to some other stuff. But I had listened to it back in the day. So my number 4 is The Gentle Art of Making Enemies. And that comes from the King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime album. I listened to that song again today, and I really, really enjoy that song for one reason. It hit me today for the first time because I hadn't listened to that song in forever. To me, that song is a precursor to some of the stuff that System of a Down would do or does, or does, depending on what day of the week it is. There's
this valid confusion right there.
Exactly. So I think that there's definitely some influence on SOD there, SOAD. Excuse me.
That's what I was mentioning earlier. Was that a lot of bands use them as a reference point, and like I'm trying to remember who it was, but there's a band that I was reading about recently that the way they actually all kind of came together was they were all Faith No More fans. So that's interesting to say. But
yeah, that's
continue
cool.
on with your list.
No problem. All right, number 3 for me is We Care a Lot from the Introduce Yourself album, not the first one. Chuck Mosley was definitely different, but this is where it all started. They had that rappy, funky thing going on, and this is one of the better songs on that first real album that they put together. So this was one of the songs that they re-recorded off the first album that they put together when they finally signed to a big label. Number 2 for me, Surprise You're Dead, off of The Real Thing. We talked about that song earlier tonight. And then number 1, oddly enough, I really enjoy it, is Falling to Pieces. There you go.
Really?
Yes, I really dig that song, except for that one part, or 2 parts, or however many times it's in there. But I really the chorus, the melody of that chorus is just so cool.
I gotcha. Wow, that one surprised me. But so we only have one song crossover, but my number 4 is Midlife Crisis off of Angel Dust. I think it's a really strong song. What's funny is that when I first heard it, I didn't even like it, but it grew on me big time as time went on, and I still have it on a playlist. My number 3 is your number 3, We Care a Lot, off of the Introduce Yourself album. I've always liked that one. There's even a line, if you've listened to me before, you know I'm probably know I'm a Transformers fan. There's a line in there that references them. So I've always liked this song. My number 2 is Zombie Eaters. We mentioned it earlier off of The Real Thing, and I love the maturity of that track. I love how it starts, and it's got this kind of ambient sound, very interesting, very like developing as things go along, and I think it's awesome. And my number 1 is Epic, and I mentioned kind of why it was one of the first Faith No More songs that I heard, and it really grabbed my attention, and it's always stuck with me, so I had to pick that one.
Well, you didn't have to.
I had to.
You had to.
It was required.
It was a prerequisite. All right, so now we're doing the big 4 Red Hot Chili Pepper songs. Take it away.
So I'm more of a fan of the later years of the Chili Peppers, or I guess the middle years at this point. My number 4 is Can't Stop off of By the Way. Huge fan of that album. Californication, By the Way, are probably my 2 favorite albums from the Chili Peppers. But By the Way, I think, takes the lead for me from beginning to end. And Can't Stop is one that just really I dig a lot. That was a tough call because there's a couple of other songs off that album I could have picked as well. My number 3 is Parallel Universe off of Californication. Ever since I first heard that song, it's been my favorite track off that album. There's a couple others I really like, but this one just always stood up for me, and it's something very different for Chili Peppers, like very like heavier, not heavy, but like it's a guitar driven song where a lot of the stuff before that was not. It was just like very funky, and this was a whole different evolution for the band. My number 2 is Under the Bridge off of Blood Sugar Sex Magic. that one's like a very meaningful song, I'm sure, for a lot of people. Feeling at your lowest and never wanting to reach that point again. I think that that can resonate with many people, and specifically for Anthony and John, like this song would be probably one of the most meaningful in their catalog. But even for somebody who hasn't been addicted to drugs but has gone through difficult things in their life, this song is amazing. And my number one is Dosed off of By the Way. This one has a dual harmony vocal line in it with John and Anthony, and it's a very beautiful song, a little softer than some of the other stuff, but it's one that really just I gravitated towards. I just absolutely love this track, and if you haven't heard it, which I don't think it's a single by any means or anything like that, but it is a song that is worth listening to. I still question what the meaning is to this day. It's never been said, but just awesome, beautiful track.
Very nice. We have zero crossover.
All right.
And we pick a couple songs from the same albums, but we don't cross over. My 4 songs come from 2 albums, and they would be my 2 favorite albums from the Chili Peppers. And I was listening to some of the other songs today just to say, okay, do I like this one more than I like that one? And after listening to them, thinking about it, and then thinking about the history of me listening to those songs, these 4 are the ones that have stuck out with me the most. So that's why I had to pick these 4. Number 4 for me, Give It Away from Blood Sugar Sex Magic. Pretty much after Higher Ground, this is the next big song that I heard from the Chili Peppers. I started working at the record store around this time, so this song really had a big impact as far as me getting into the Chili Peppers. The video is really cool. The fact that they basically flipped the tape and played the guitar solo backwards throughout the solo. And the funny thing is, in the video, they do the same thing with the little squirrely thing that's going around. It's really cool. So I like that song a lot. And I try to get my girls to listen to it. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.
Do they do a little dance and then drink a little water?
Exactly. Number 3, Other Side from Californication. This was the one song that I had, I don't want to say I had trouble picking. It was the one song that I said, is this the song that I really listen to the most based on what, after the first 2 songs that are on this list, or the 1 and 2. And yes, I really, really like the vocals on this song. It really, really shows how good of a vocalist Anthony is. There's almost a cappella-ish to some degree, each of the lines that he delivers, and I really think he's an exceptional vocalist. Number 2 for me is Californication from Californication. That song is just so cool. It's not a lot that I can say about it. It's just a really, really cool song. I love when that song comes on. I listen to it. I know the lyrics. It's a really, really cool song for me. But number 1 is off of Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and this song is Suck My Kiss. I love that song. That is by far my favorite Red Hot Chili Peppers song. It's not their typical style, and that's part of the reason why I really, really like this song. And it's very heavy. So I love that song.
I like all of those. But obviously I like the ones that I picked a little more.
Those other 4 more.
No, I thought about it Other Side because I really do like that song a lot, but you can only pick 4. That's tough.
It. You can only pick 4. Well, and that is our double Big 4 for tonight. Big 4 Red Hot Chili Peppers, Big 4 Faith No More. And that concludes this episode of Debating Metal. So, as always, remember to like, subscribe, and download the show on your favorite podcast platform.
And don't forget you can interact with us by commenting on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can DM us as well. If you listen to us on YouTube, be sure to leave us a comment, or you can just send us an email to debatingmetal@gmail.com. So remember to tune in to the next episode where we spark up another exciting metal debate. On behalf of Kenneth and myself, stay safe and always turn it up to 11.
See ya.